What's a parenting method that you believe messes up kids? I remember the day I stopped trying at school. In high school I came first in my class at a biology test. It was a big win for me cause I wasn't particularly talented at anything else and I had some real competition in that class. I went home and told my mum about it and she just asked why didn't you get 100%. Took all enjoyment out of my victory, and instead of motivating me as she intended it made me wonder why I should even bother as nothing I do will ever be good enough so why waste my time. The what's good for the goose is good for the gander method when it comes to discipline. It can cause a lot of resentment among siblings. I'm the oldest out of 5 and if one of us got in trouble then all of us got in trouble. My parents believed that by doing this we would try harder to stay out of trouble so we wouldn't get our siblings punished also. It caused a lot of resentment among us especially towards my middle brother who had ADHD. He tried so hard to stay out of trouble but he was almost consistently doing something stupid. There was a month where we didn't talk to him because he got our Nintendo 64 taken away. I ended it when he started to cry one night because he believed we didn't love him anymore. I never understood the mindset behind this kind of punishment. All it says to me is that there's no point in being good because I'm just going to get punished for someone else's actions anyway. I had a teacher who did this all the time and I was well behaved until she started enacting this idiotic punishment. Holding children to a higher standard than the adults in the household. My dad could scream, throw things, sometimes at us, break things, sometimes our things, etc. It would usually be our fault or he would laugh it off as normal dad behavior, but if one of us acted that way there was heck to pay. He basically got to throw tantrums like a child because it was his house and he was entitled, but if we the children did that we would be punished, sometimes physically threatened, ridiculed, etc. That was my dad, and all my mother did was say let it go and keep on enabling him and allowed him to do that. Belittling their problems. I'm 26 and my mother still does this. She's a teacher with a martyr complex so she has the hardest, most unappreciated job ever. I stopped trying to voice frustration with my own job, because don't I know how hard teachers have it? She doesn't get a raise either. Sometimes you just wanna talk to your mom as an adult and bond about how crappy workplaces can be sometimes without it turning into a pee match. Ugh. You just reminded me of my aunt. She's a single, tenure teacher which is a great job that pays really well here. She also owns her own home outright and her only expenses is herself and her cat. The way she talks about it you'd think she's working in a gulag. She isn't even a good teacher. She's the mean teacher you had in elementary school that hates children. Parents who never give their kids space or trust them at all. I had a teacher who would say how she'd monitor her kid's cell phone and keep him on a pretty tight leash. Albeit in a few years, the kid is currently 4. I don't think I would have grown up to love my parents and be a respectful functioning adult if my parents didn't trust me and give me a little bit of space. When parents talk about their kids right in front of them about how they are bad or don't listen or like to give you a hard time, this gives the child a story about themselves that they are a bad child. This leads to more negative behavior because you are giving the child permission to behave that way. It's who they are now. Also, when parents complain that their child is giving them a hard time, what they should say is that my child is having a hard time. Everyone gets frustrated being a parent, but this type of reaction is self-sabotaging. Avoiding opportunities to show their kids that they are human and especially so when they themselves were kids. Every time I give my kids a rule or guideline, I explain to them why it exists and give them examples from my childhood and what I learned from it as the rationale. We have a working understanding that my goal in parenting is to do everything I can to help them succeed more and fail less by being honest about my own successes and failures when I was in their shoes. You need to tell your children that you are sorry when you screw up. Offer a heartfelt apology when you make a mistake. Don't try to explain away your error. Just sit them down, look them in the eye and say, I screwed that up. I'm sorry. Will you please forgive me? They will, and they'll respect you for it. My mother is always right. If she messes up, she will turn it around and blame it on my father or I. I think she's half-assed apologized to me maybe 3 times in my almost 36 years. Doing everything for them and not allowing them to learn from experience. It goes from creating sheltered kids to incapable teens who don't have any street smarts, initiative, or sense of responsibility for themselves. I have teenage relations who still have to ask their parents if they're allowed dessert after dinner, leave perishables open and out after using them, and think watching the news on TV is too grown up for them. I could give so many more examples, but I'll leave it at that for now. Came here to say this exactly. Doing everything for your child doesn't give them the opportunity to struggle, learn coping strategies, and gain a sense of accomplishment. Making fun of their interests. Next thing you know, they will be in their teens and you'll wonder why they never talk to you. Also, making fun of them having a crush on someone. Then the parents will wonder why they're still single. Not letting kids ever say no. Obviously, there are certain things parents should make their kids do. Eating some fruits and vegetables, going to school, getting vaccinations, etc. But when you never let them say no, particularly to things like hugging an older relative, don't be surprised to find a teenager and an adult who has a really hard time saying no to things they don't want to do. Dang, I'm handing these upvotes out like candy. Publicly embarrassing your child as a form of punishment for mistakes they may make. It's worse when you don't explain to them what they did wrong and how to correct their mistakes. Bonus negative points for posting it on the internet and patting yourself on the back for how innovative you are at punishment. Do not ever push your kids to the absolute limit academically, as in I'll only love you if you do well at school. 95% of the time, they will rebel in their teenage years. My parents are still doing this to me, and it is the sole reason I'm afraid to go to college. I always used to have such stress in school, not because of assignments, but because I was afraid of being berated for hours because my grades weren't good. I took care of you for 17 years. You owe me. My fiance's mom has this mindset. Calls for money or place to stay while repeating that statement. This is the excuse my dad gave when I caught him stealing from me. I don't know how many thousands he got from me before I caught him and decided he shouldn't have my bank card for an emergency. I don't recommend my parents' method. The good old head in the sand. If we don't bring up a topic, we'll never have to deal with it. This was particularly true about sex, but also dating, making new friends away from home, becoming financially independent, and a whole bunch of other issues that they didn't want to talk about because if you talk about it, then the thing is real. Of course, I eventually learned about all these things from other sources, but as adults, we have a very strained relationship, in part because they refused to talk with me about anything. The rare times they brought up topics, they were never interested in my opinion or experience, just getting their point across and getting out. I was raised like this. My mom died about 3 weeks ago after losing her second battle to cancer. I couldn't talk to her about the things I wanted to because that's the dynamic she built. We couldn't talk about issues that are uncomfortable. To my siblings, making mom uncomfortable was mean, but not talking to mom was mean. So I don't talk to them either. My family, immediate and extended, used to have a habit of always teasing us kids about love interests, people we liked. It embarrassed me so much that I would never talk to anyone in my family about people I liked, and even in high school I never told anyone in my family about the girl I was dating. I eventually started making a conscious effort to include my family in my personal life. They only meant well the whole time. But I'm still a little bit messed up from that mindset of being embarrassed to openly show personal affection for someone or talk about it. My dad was horrible at this, as well as acknowledging or respecting our emotional lives in general. He pretty much made himself impossible to open up to, as it just left you vulnerable to teasing, at best, or insults, more common. Take a wild guess who I'm still on the fence about inviting to my wedding this fall. When parents are extremely harsh in general, on one spectrum, and when parents are extremely lax on the other end. Both of those just do not work at all. Ignoring them. I worked at a daycare and there was a little boy who told us how he used to play underneath the deck, and once he walked out of his house into the ice cream shop, across a busy 6-lane road. He was so sweet but didn't quite know how to interact with anyone, because he was just alone at home. I have a baby now and I get so sad if I leave him to play by himself for more than 5 minutes. I couldn't imagine that little boy not knowing what that kind of love is like. I left that job before anything was done, but a girl I became friends with there said eventually CPS was called. I hope he gets to be the kid he deserves to be. ETA. A lot of people are saying kids entertaining themselves is also a good thing, and I definitely agree. By ignoring, I don't mean giving them space to play alone. I mean neglecting them, overlooking their wants and needs because you couldn't be bothered. When I was learning to drive, I nearly flattened a kid with my dad's van when he rode out into the road. Parents, watch your freaking kids. Thankfully I was so paranoid and cautious as a new driver that I'd seen the kid a long way back and was already driving slowly because I could sense he was about to do something stupid. Exposure to different foods. If you let your kid eat the same thing every meal every day, then don't act surprised when she grows up and is exceptionally picky. Raising your daughter as a princess and not making them contribute to the household chores. My daughter's friend was such a princess that when she got to college she had no idea how to operate a washing machine and had never used a vacuum cleaner. My children were taught to help around the house at an early age and they have a fantastic work ethic in the business world now. The princess above still struggles, never finished college and cannot hold a job or relationship for very long. Complaining about how their activities and hobbies impact you. A guy could be watching my shows instead of driving you to karate. I've spent so much on lessons and you've barely improved. I hate having to wash your football kit. My personal favorite every time I was in the car with my mum, driving to stores or grandparents so that house looks nice. I'd love to live there away from all of you, on my own. Thanks mum. Empty threats. I can't stand those parents who shout and scream at their kids, the ones who are always moaning their kids are naughty, but they never punish them. They just shout. Shouting does nothing. Ground them, dock their pocket money, confiscate their phone. You need to actually do something. Shouting about it is useless. Besides, shouting just teaches them that shouting when angry is okay. It's best to do those things without any shouting, and especially without hitting. Telling your child that nothing is wrong with them, their problems are all in their head, and to suck it up. This is how mental health issues go undiagnosed. I spent over 20 years thinking that it was normal to feel the way I felt and that I just needed to suck it up until my wife started prying into my issues and helped me realize that what I was experiencing was not normal whatsoever. There are situations where the child may be overdramatic or embellishing things, but if they are persistent about an issue or exhibit odd behavior on a consistent basis, it cannot be ignored. Oh my gosh, yes, you're a teenager, you don't have anything to be depressed about, facepalm. The whole staying together for the kids thing. One of two things is going to happen. Either the kids won't see anything wrong, making their idea of what relationships should be based on a lie, or they do see something wrong, in which case you've accomplished nothing but potentially lose their respect, and also potentially robbing them of growing up witnessing what actual happiness can look like. Full disclosure, there might be more outcomes than that since familial and relationship dynamics are vastly varied and complex. Not giving a child boundaries. I've never physically punished my 4 children, but they had boundaries that they crossed at their peril. They are now 4 happy, healthy, respectful, generous and kind adults. They had their moments, but compared to some kids, they didn't cause us that much grief. We're proud of them. I once heard give your child boundaries, and they will feel safe within them. I must say that this strategy has worked wonders for my older daughter. She's a really good person. My son is only 3, and he's always pushing whatever boundary he can. Shout out to my Asians putting so much importance on schoolwork and grades. It's important, yes, but I think more important to develop a true sense of well-roundedness, not just joining multiple honors clubs and one sport and one instrument to put on your college application. It's why so many young Asian kids have totally stellar grades in high school and college and you think they're going to become senators and doctors. But then half of them fizzle out and disappear by age 22 and you wonder whatever happened to Enoch Kim and Joy Chang, because they never learned how to develop dreams or ambition beyond their grade point average. Fussing over them too much. Every time they sneeze it's all like the poor dear has the flu. Or you see a kid fall over and you can tell it wasn't hard enough to hurt them, but they've got their parents sussed and so make a huge scene so the parents come running to their rescue. When parents do that, they are just creating kids who will become neurotic and needy adults. However, I think my parents went a bit too far the other way. I fell hard on my arm at the park once and my mum was like, "You're fine. Go to school." The school ended up having to call her and make her take me to the hospital because I was in so much pain. Turns out I'd broken my arm. So yeah, something in between those two is probably the right amount. The best way is to laugh it off. When the child sees a parent fussing, they cry to get more attention. If the parent laughs it off, the child will see that and start laughing too. If the parent laughs but the child cries, you know something is wrong. Simple, elementary. My dear son Adele, class of 99. Not believing what your child says for a number of reasons. Wanting attention, faking it, drama queen, act, will mess them up bad. I have diagnosed mental illnesses, psychosis, major depressive disorder, anxiety, and I can't talk to my parents about it because they never seem to believe me. It screws me over big time still because I depend on them for much needed treatment that I'm afraid to ask for. Parents always texting, worrying where you are constantly. The stress of the impending doom of getting that call from my parents ruined a lot of fun times. Also, my parents always used to brag about how they had no cell phones growing up and could go out all day without talking to their parents. Yet, they still were helicopter parents to me. Very frustrating. Inconsistency and lack of structure, and also just straight impatience and moodiness. I easily picked up on the fact that my mom was just being mean and angry at us over her own life, and it made me a highly insecure and non-confrontational individual. Don't bully your kids and you have to. That parents have to be in agreement with each other in all their parenting decisions and always back each other's decisions up. One spouse shouldn't let the other wreak havoc and not intervene, just for the sake of presenting a united front. Also that the parent is always right. You should be able to discuss disagreements so the kid learns how to stand up for themselves when conflict happens. The goal is to raise good adults, not good children. Helicopter parenting. If you are watching your kids' every move and controlling them until they're 25 and move out, you are seriously messing them up. A kid needs to fall and scrape their knee or else they'll grow up scared of falling. They also need to know how to go out and learn street smarts. If you never let your kid go out without you, they'll never learn street smarts. If your kid is 18 and you still tell them they can't go somewhere without parents, that is a problem. Sorry if it seems like I'm ranting. That's because I am Lumpheo. My girlfriend's parents are exactly like that and it is infuriating. Dropping your young kids on your older kids. I've got friends my age, early 20s, who watch their younger brother who is 5 now. The mom has done almost no parenting at all, and while somebody in their 20s is perfectly capable of raising a child, in theory, this kid is totally fricked because he's been exposed to way too much mature crap too early, without the proper context to understand any of it. Why have another kid if you're not interested in raising one? Makes absolutely no freaking sense to me. Only punishing, never rewarding. I grew up getting yelled at, grounded, and threatened for every mistake and bad grade, and never hearing any encouragement or an "I'm proud of you" whenever I did good. I tried for years to please my parents and earn just a little bit of praise, but nothing was ever good enough. I was either criticized or unnoticed, and as a result, in my teens I fell into a deep depression and just quit trying. I gave up on school, which earned me more punishments and yelling, but I just didn't care anymore. Why bother trying when you clearly can't do anything right? It really takes a toll on a kid when they grow up being nitpicked and criticized constantly, and it messed me up well into my 30s. I struggled with depression and cripplingly low self-esteem for decades, and while I'm about 99% over those things, I'm still really sensitive to criticism. I feel hopeless a lot and I cry really easily. It shocks me whenever anyone says something nice to me. I don't really know how to react to compliments. When a child is never disciplined for anything, it'll be your fault when your 30-year-old son spends 15 hours a week describing to a psychiatrist that he was sent to jail at 18 for smearing poop in the library. Always giving in. My brother is a freaking C who only eats like 10 different things because my mother always gave in to his stupid balls during dinner. I seriously dread the day I will be hosting Christmas for the family. Being way too strict. I have a friend whose parents ground him months at a time for like getting only a 3 in an incredibly difficult class, or put about as much child locks on all his electronics as possible for not turning in homework. Sure, he's a good kid, but he's a nervous wreck. Another example is my ex-girlfriend. She was caught eating Nutella at like 13 straight, and to this day, late 16, she's basically banned from all sweets for as long as can be enforced. And guess what? She has a candy addiction, both hate their parents, have anxiety and depression, and have every intention to get the heck out of there as soon as they hit 18 and never look back. Sure, you can be too loose, but it's all on a spectrum, and you should be in the center. Getting only a 3 in an incredibly difficult class. Took me way too long to realize that you were talking GPA and not the out of a 100 grade. Overbearing parents that don't give their kids privacy or trust. My mom constantly raided my room and checked my phone and emails and questioned me about everything and would always try to catch me lying. Once I entered college, I had such bad anxiety that I dropped out because I couldn't handle something else going on that was going to be graded and scrutinized. It took me years to overcome the anxiety caused by her constantly meddling and questioning. Actively discouraging your kids from pursuing their interests. My paternal grandparents were very guilty of this, and my dad suffered from depression as a teen because of it. He made sure not to raise us like that. My grandpa married a real grade A a-hole and she had grandkids a couple years behind us. She actually said, granddaughter, wanted to play the sax and we all tried to talk her out of it. We were shocked and appalled. My dad even blurted out why. Funny enough, when said granddaughter turned 18, she wanted to join the Air Force, but none of her family would sign the form. Finally she got her rebel aunt to sign and has a military career. Boy, did I catch crap for doing music in college instead of something noble, but thankfully my dad didn't pass all they said down to me. I firmly believe following any parenting method 100% screws up a lot of kids. Kids are different, which is why there are a million different ways to raise kids and they all work. They just don't work for every child. Some methods consistently work worse than others. I'm right because I am the parent. Frick this mentality. It's lazy, stupid, and ignorant. If you don't want your kid to do something, then give them a fricking legitimate reason. Don't have one? Then you're just being an butthole. What's worse is how this crap still applies in my adult life. My boss has this mentality for his employees. I'm just from thinking about it. I think parenting methods are the biggest things messing up children these days. Parents need to engage with their kids, be active participants in their lives, talk to them, play with them, read with them, do homework with them, and they will turn out okay. Trying to cram your kid into a tried and true method will screw them up fast. All kids are different. Attempting to find something wrong with a chore or something. My mom would always find the one thing I messed up on or did not do, and this led me to just stop doing chores altogether because I knew that they would never actually be praised or rewarded. She was not trying to be mean, I understand that, but she still did that every time I tried to do anything. If I put away the dishes, say, wow, good job, you put this one in the wrong spot, but that's okay, thank you, instead of saying, what do you mean you put away the dishes? This one isn't even in the right spot. Haha. Now as an adult I find myself letting things pile up because to me I don't think cleaning them up will actually matter. Like if I wear something, I'll put it in the laundry thing, but I will run out of clothes before I actually do my laundry. Starving them and not giving them treatment for their diabetes until they eventually die at the age of 15 weighing 37 pounds. Insulting their taste in music. I'm 20 years old and whenever my parents walk up the stairs I turn my music off. I know for a fact they are just going to say, what is this crap? My dad listens to Hazel O'Connor. He has no right on an opinion on my music taste. Being raised in a strict religious environment for sure. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness and I am diagnosed with PTSD currently. The insane amount of stress they put on children to be perfect is just absurd and downright evil at times. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.